Hey guys, so today we're here with the RedRock 4x4 Avenger full width front bumper fitting all 2018 and newer JL Wranglers. So if you're looking for a full width bumper that's going to provide a lot of protection to the front end of your Jeep while also changing up the aesthetic to an off-road and heavy-duty look, this is going to be a great choice to take a look into. So as you can tell, and as it says in the name, this is going to provide full front end protection. But what I do really like about this is that it's going to have very high angled up ends. So you are getting some protection to the fenders as well as the tires, but this is not going to compromise your approach angles or any of your clearance while you're off-road. Perfect for somebody who wants that protection but also wants to do some off-roading and wants that extra clearance in the meantime. Now in the middle you are going to have a large center section which is going to provide a lot of front end protection to any obstacles while you're out on the trail, and you're also going to get a bull bar up top that's going to give your grille a little bit of extra protection as well. Now what I do really like about this is that the bull bar itself is removable. This is a modular front bumper, so you can take that off and customize the look and feel as well as the functionality of the Jeep if you choose to do so. Now speaking of that, this does also come with a bolt-on winch plate. Now you only will be able to utilize that if you are bolting up a winch. Now I personally kind of like that, considering that if you do not choose to mount up a winch right away, you don't have that fair lead, creating a very clean look out of the front bumper. Now, this is also going to come with a couple of other features, including D-ring mounts and D-rings included in the kit for recovery if you get into a sticky situation on the trail, and the option to swap over your factory fog lights. Now, this is also going to come with a couple of LED light mounts or accessory mounts right up on top of the bull bar. So again, you can customize this to however you want to set up the front bumper. Now with all that being said, this is going to come in at roughly $700, which puts it at a more reasonable price or a lower price than some of the other full width options. Now usually when you're taking a look at front bumpers on the page, some of the less expensive choices are usually going to be a little bit simpler in the fact that they may be for a mid-width or a stubby front bumper in comparison to this, as to where you are getting full front end protection. Not to mention, some of the more expensive choices are usually going to come with some extra bells and whistles. So they may come with a drop-in winch plate for a little bit of extra protection to the winch, or they may come with a dual hook as well as a D-ring mount. So it kind of comes down to what you want to do with your front bumper. However, if you're just looking for some of the standard features, heavy-duty off-road look, and some aggressive off-road or aggressive front-end protection with a lot of clearance on the sides, this is going to be a great choice to take a look into. Now install is going to be pretty easy at a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. So speaking of the install, let's jump into that now. The tools that I used for my install were an electric ratchet, a 1/4 inch drive and 3/8 inch drive ratchet, a 10mm wrench, an 18, 16, 13, 8, and 7mm deep socket. They provided an Allen key, a 3-inch extension, a Phillips head screwdriver, a trim removal tool, and an electric impact. So the first step to removing our bumper is to remove our upper splash shield. I'm going to use a trim removal tool in order to remove the pop clips that are holding it in. You could also use a flathead screwdriver. So our next step is actually underneath the Jeep. We're going to take off the lower splash shield. I'm going to take out the 8mm bolt on the back of the splash shield with an 8mm socket. There's going to be one on either side. Once that's removed, what we can do is remove the clips on the front. I'm going to use that same trim removal tool that we use with the upper splash shield. Next, we can remove the front skid plate. I'm going to be using a 16mm socket to remove the 2 bolts that are holding it in. I'm also using my electric impact. And at this point, what we can do is just give it a good push up, and it'll come right off. So now what we can do is disconnect our main fog light wiring harness. So we're just gonna press down on this tab here. It might be easier to actually remove it from that clip. We're gonna press down on that tab and pull back. And then once that's removed, we can actually remove our bumper by taking an 18mm socket and removing the hardware that's attached to the back of the studs that's holding our bumper onto the frame. So I'm going to take that 18mm socket again with my electric ratchet, and we can go ahead and remove those. There's going to be 2 on each side of the frame. Then we can repeat that for the other 6 studs. At this point, what we can do is remove our front bumper. So because we need to swap over our fog lights, we need to take out the fog lights themselves as well as the harness. So you are going to need a 7mm socket for this, and you're also going to need a trim removal tool. So what we're going to do is take off these trim pieces on the side, and then we'll be able to access the back of our fog lights. We can do the same thing on the other side. So now we have access to the back of our fog light. We can depress this clip and pull back to unplug it. Get that out of the way. Then what we can do is remove the 4 screws that are holding it in. I'm going to use a 7mm socket for that. And we can do the same thing on the other side. So what we need to do now is remove this front plastic piece from the actual bumper. It's held in by multiple 7mm screws, just like the fog lights. So I'm going to take that same 7mm socket so we can get this front part off, expose our wiring harness, and completely unclip it. So once all of those are out and the bumper is on its face right now, we can take that same trim removal tool and just pop the clips out of the back of the bumper on either side, maybe 2. Then we can flip the bumper over, pull up from the bottom, and push this plastic piece around the tow hook. And then we can just take this off. And that will expose the rest of the wiring harness up at the top. We'll take that same trim removal tool and just completely remove the harness. So before we hop into the install, I did want to stop down and tell you guys a little bit more about this new front bumper, especially in comparison to our factory one, and some of the similarities and the differences between the two. Now overall, this is going to provide a lot more protection than the factory front bumper would, considering it is made of a heavy-duty steel material. Now this is also going to have a nice textured black powder coat finish on top that's going to protect the steel underneath and provide a more heavy-duty off-road look for the front end of your JL. Now what I do really like about this is that it's going to keep the similar length, so you are getting a full width front bumper with this, and your factory one is going to be a standard width or a full width as well. That's going to provide some extra protection to the front end of the tires as well as to the fenders, so if you are going off-road a lot, that is going to give you some extra protection there. Now the difference between the full width between the factory front bumper and the new front bumper is the fact that these ends are angled up very high, so that's going to allow a lot more clearance on the sides for bigger wheels and tires, as well as some better articulation and better clearance while you're off-road, especially when it comes to your approach angles. Now this is going to have a couple of more features that your factory front bumper is unable to allow, including a winch plate and a bull bar for extra protection. We will have to install that in just a second, but that is going to provide a little bit more than your factory front bumper would. Now this is also going to accept those factory fog lights, so you are keeping your factory lighting there for some extra visibility while you're driving around. So overall, this is going to provide a lot more benefits than the factory front bumper. So what do you say we put it together and get it on our Jeep? So before we put our bumper on our Jeep, we do need to mount up the bull bar as well as mount up our fog lights. Now, if you have a winch, you can install the winch plate at this time. It is just going to sandwich in between the bumper as well as the winch. So you would add the winch plate onto here and then secure down your winch, and that will add the fair lead onto the front. We are not including a winch in this, so we are not going to install the winch plate. However, you would use the hardware for your winch in order to install the winch plate. Now at this point, what we're going to do is install the bull bar. There is hardware provided for this, so we're going to place this down on top. It might be helpful if you have a friend with you to help you out. I'm just going to kind of hang it on the side there, grab our button head hardware, and secure it down. So I'm going to use the smaller flat washer on top and then the larger flat washer on the bottom. And there is a little bit of adjustability with this. So what I would recommend to do is get one bolt on either side mounted up, and then you can get the rest in pretty easily. So once you have 2 in on either side, it should stay in place, then we can get the rest in place. I'm gonna go back to the original one, and you can shimmy this back and forth and adjust it to wherever you'd like to add it onto your bumper. So now we can take our provided Allen key, put that in the top of our bolt here, and I'm just going to take an electric ratchet to quicken up the process, but it has a 13mm socket on the back. We can tighten those up. Same thing on the other side. So once that's tightened up, we can lay our bumper down and we can install our fog lights. So I am installing our factory fog lights. Now this bumper does not come with hardware for the fog lights, so I would recommend to outsource for that. I am going to be using small Phillips head screws and a nut on the other side in order to install them. I also am missing a couple of mounting locations, so I only am using 6. However, what we can do is line these up and get these installed. So I'm using a Phillips head screwdriver just to get them started. And then we'll use a 10mm wrench to completely tighten them down. So once they're in there, what we can do is take a 10mm wrench and tighten that up. We can do the same thing on the other side. All right, so now we're ready to mount up our front bumper. So at this point, we're ready to mount up our front bumper. This has studs on it, so it will sit on the frame horns once we put it in place. So at this point, once the bumper is on, what we can do is secure it down using the provided hardware, the flat washer, lock washer, and nut. And we can repeat that for the other 6 studs. So after all the hardware is threaded on, we can tighten it up with a 16mm deep socket. I'm also using an extension just to give myself some room. Last but not least, we can plug in our fog light wiring harness. Want to make sure that this wiring is cleaned up and out of the way. I would recommend to zip tie it. And then we can install our D-rings, and then we'll be all good to go. So that's gonna wrap it up for my review and install. Make sure you like and subscribe, and for more videos and products just like this, always keep it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.